1 minute. I'd like to call to order this workshop on November the 8th, 2022. It's 9:05, and thank you all for being here with us. We're going to revise our agenda a bit, and we will be covering the items that are listed, the 4 items that are listed in the morning, and in the afternoon, we'll revise to only cover items 5, 9, and 10. So first of all, we're going to get started this morning and talk about the Circus Arts Conservatory. Jody Dumas, please come forward. And before we speak on that, the superintendent has a public service announcement about Nicole.
Nicole, yeah. So we have a tropical storm / hurricane, I guess. Nicole, as everyone knows, I just wanted to give everybody a quick update. At this point in time, it looks like it'll be a Category 1 hurricane that hits the East Coast, right around, I guess, between Fort Lauderdale and Cape Canaveral, maybe. And it's going to come across the state, and it looks like we here in Sarasota, at this point in time, right now, Wednesday around 6 p.m. is when we would start getting tropical winds. And so right now, as it stands, we will be in school on Wednesday because it's not expected to be a hurricane. It'll be more of a tropical storm. And we would be in school on Wednesday. And then Thursday is up in the air. We have a meeting with the EOC at 1 o'clock today to see if they need us to open up any shelters, especially since those south of us took a hard hit from the last hurricane, Hurricane Ian, and might be in need of shelters. So we'll find out more about that at 1 o'clock from the EOC. But right now, we're in school, and we'll be in school on Wednesday at this point. Afternoon activities after 5:30 would be canceled because we'll have tropical storm winds coming in around then. And then Thursday, we'll see what that's all about. Remember, bridges close, I think, at 40 miles per hour, and buses can't run after 40 miles per hour wind. And so we'll have to take that into consideration as well. But that's where we are. Just want everybody to know. And again, I'll have more information at 1 o'clock after we meet with the EOC. Thank you.
Okay, well, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you this morning. We have our friends from the Circus Arts Conservatory here to talk with you this morning. The reason they're here is we are in the process of modifying the lease agreement we have with them for what we used to call the Sailor Circus property on the Sarasota High campus. I believe Kathy emailed you our current long-term standing agreement that's in place. We're working with the team here to modify that agreement, and that potential agreement will be on your next board meeting. So I wanted to have the team here today from the conservatory to talk a little bit about their plans and what that looks like and the reason for the changes in the lease. So with that, let me turn it over to them.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for having us.
The mic on?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to have us here, and just really proud of my heritage, the circus, and it's an important part of Sarasota's heritage. And, I'm born and raised here and grew up here, and just really proud to be able to continue the circus and pass it on to the younger generation at the highest level. And I'm just so proud of everybody that's helped us along the way to get where we are, believe it or not, 25 years since we started. So thank you so much. And, as you know, our mission is performance, training, outreach, and legacy, and we feel very passionately about each and every one of them.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Pedro Reis. I'm the founder and CEO of the Circus Arts Conservatory. And since taking over the program in 2011, we've done substantial improvements, not only to the administrative building, but to the legendary arena. We raised $5 million to do the improvements, which includes, of course, most importantly, air conditioning. Our plans are, we have some great plans for the future, and it's important that we can extend this agreement to the 99 years that we've spoke about in the past. So again, thank you for this opportunity, and I'll hand it over to our Vice President and COO, Jennifer Mitchell.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to see everybody. As our nonprofit, as Dolly said, embarks on its 25th anniversary, we are pleased to provide you, our esteemed Sarasota School Board members, with an update of our important mission and where we're going as an organization. This is really all essential as you review the lease agreement that is being currently updated, because I think it'll give you a better understanding of the true value that the Circus Arts Conservatory not only brings to our community, but more importantly to the school district and the students here in Sarasota County. I'm going to try to do both at one time. We'll see how I do here. Okay. The internationally renowned Circus Arts Conservatory, also known as CAC, is home to Circus Sarasota and the Sailor Circus Academy, America's longest-running youth circus and after-school training program. Each year, CAC presents thrilling world-class professional performances for tens of thousands of circus lovers under our big top. But in addition, we provide after-school circus arts integrated training programs and in-school STEAM, arts-based science education, and we also do healthcare outreach programs to thousands of beneficiaries each year. Couple of quick facts, and you'll find some of this in the materials that we passed along to you. Our annual impact numbers are quite impressive, though we are a small nonprofit. We serve more than 1,000 students a year annually through our training and education programs. These are the after-school training programs. We have more than a $10 million economic community impact with the work that we do. We have 7,000 students in the 5th grade who have been impacted and educated in our science program. More than 100,000 patrons attend our performances, and we have 250 active volunteers, many of them educators who help our students, coaches, and others who help do the important work that we do. And we are the nation's only nonprofit circus that combines professional circus artistry along with our education programs and our youth training programs, something that I think should really be celebrated here in Sarasota. I've mentioned before that most people think the circus is synonymous with the greatest show on earth, but at CAC, we think it's synonymous with the greatest teaching tool on earth. Circus arts creates a rich environment at the intersection of physical education and the performing arts. It's given opportunities to students to self-identify areas of interest and work towards building their skills and confidence. We're seeing students who are reluctant to participate in more traditional PE activities shine in the circus arts. This newfound confidence these students have permeates into all areas of the school day and can even serve as an equalizer in their lives. Over the last 7 years, we have instructed more than 50,000 students in over 35 elementary, middle, and high schools in Florida in arts-integrated educational programs that fulfill the Florida state standards. They also identify many standards within STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, theater, physical education, and math. We're motivating kids grades pre-K through 12 to capture their curiosity. They learn through kinesthetic learning experiences for all age levels, learning abilities, and styles. And in fact, circus is a beautiful art form of movement and skill, and it offers great lessons in physics as well. Utilizing the engineering and artistic achievements of the circus arts, CAC's 5th grade science curriculum demonstrates science, engineering, art, and team problem solving required to produce a contraption-based circus performance. Results in 2019 showed that our Circus Science Machine program had incredible academic results. Of the 450 fifth grade participants being assessed in their knowledge of physics and Newton's laws, 93% had a passing score on the post-assessment test. Test scores showed a learning gain of overall 56%. 36% was our goal, so we blew that out of the water. One of the biggest achievements for circus arts education nationwide, and I mentioned this to Dr. Aspen when we met earlier in the year, is we are the only school district in the country that has a circus magnet program embedded into the school day. We started with a partnership with Sarasota High School, and this is the first ever Circus Arts Magnet accredited program. And together with Sarasota High School, under the leadership of Mr. Jones and Michelle Anderson, CAC developed this 4-year program for students interested in studying the circus arts with an unparalleled depth for academic credit as a high school student. The partnership between CAC, SHS, and the Paint Center at USF is like no other, and it's the only one in the nation that certifies that circus arts is a tool for educating. Initially, the program focused on physical education courses, of course, due in part to the large nature of the skills and disciplines of the circus arts. As students move through the program, other disciplines as visual arts, business management, history, and vocational studies are incorporated. Within the development of each student, we are seeing a level of professionalism build, giving them the skills and understanding needed after graduation to truly be competitive in the 21st century. And to be competitive in the 21st century global economic and any industry, these young professionals will need to be able to juggle more than just clubs. So, from the SHS Magnet program, students are gaining these 21st century skills of understanding collaboration and teamwork, creativity and imagination, critical thinking, and problem solving. And you can read on some of these slides the student testimonials. For instance, this class has taught us a different perspective on how to approach situations. We are pushed out of our comfort zone to try new things we normally wouldn't do on our own. In 2020, amongst the pandemic, we started a culturally relevant, culturally inclusive, arts-integrated circus curriculum in partnership again with USF at Booker Middle School. This innovative program demonstrates the importance of rethinking school curricula, informing teachers and students on how to incorporate history, arts, race, the circus, and culture to improve education for all. The amazing Dr. LaShawn Frost knows that when students add activities such as art, dance, music, performance, and athletics to their young academic lives, the resulting impact significantly helps form the foundation for successful adult lives. Booker Middle School students take level-appropriate courses in circus movement, mental training, managing injuries and physical theater, aerial awareness, and acrobatics, both at Booker Middle and at the Sailor Circus Arena, where they come 4 days a week. Enrollment in both of these programs are doubling each year. They also come at no cost to the school district. Our Sailor Circus Arena, I'll just finish these Booker slides where you can see some of our students here in the arena. Okay, our Sailor Circus Arena is home to the nation's longest running and most preeminent youth training program, and the Sailor Circus Arena is our largest tool in educating and training young people in the circus arts. As Pedro mentioned, in 2018, a $5 million arena renovation project was completed and delivered to our community and the district a 30,000 square foot unparalleled space, state-of-the-art educational circus arts training and performance facility. Circus is the art of possibility. It's an art form in which every age is welcome. Diversity and inclusion are actively embraced, and everyone, from performer to audience member, is inspired to dream and experience awe. One of the most significant aspects of the circus arts is that it has no boundaries. The art form itself is a celebration of seeing humans push limitations. In the circus arts, there is no separation of teams by gender or age or physical attribute. How that translates into real-life career skills is exceptional for these young people. The Circus Arts is one of the few youth development programs that combine artistry and athleticism. With the upgrading of our youth circus arena, we completed phase 1 of a planned expansion. And already, the arena is used to capacity on most days, sometimes living up to that idiom of a 3-ring circus. And I'll let you see a few more pictures of our students. This young man is actually the grandson of a former school board member. These students were in Washington, D.C. at the Smithsonian Folklife Festival. This young man is a Pineview graduate who you will read his testimonial in the booklet that I shared with you. He is now at Amherst. This young lady went on to Florida State University studying law. And here you can see that we truly believe we're changing their future and building tomorrow's leaders. The next phase of our expansion will bring a much-needed enlarged campus, multi-purpose facilities, classrooms, dressing rooms, and a competition performance space. Both the Booker Middle School Magnet and Sarasota High School Magnet programs are the only ones of their kind in the country and can be models for arts education nationally. They are also doubling in enrollment each year, and interest is only growing. We've partnered with Sweet Sparkman, architects familiar with the school district, to develop a proposed master plan concept. Together with the architects before the pandemic, we took a trip to Montreal, Canada. Montreal is actually a North American hub of the circus arts. The city is home to the National Circus School, École Nationale de Cirque, which is a premier university of circus arts studies, and many other circus companies, including the national headquarters of Cirque du Soleil. I'm going to give you a quick preview, insight into what we learned on that trip, because I think it's important that you understand we've been looking at other cities and hubs and educational centers so that we can build the premier center here in Sarasota. We looked at a variety of spaces, circus institutions, educational institutions, and facilities to augment our ideas on how we would plan our international training circus education campus. Here you will see that we visited the École Nationale de Cirque and the Cirque du Soleil headquarters. These are classroom and educational spaces built and designed for students to not only study, but also study within the circus arts, but also to train physically and mentally within the circus arts. They had expansive training studios, state-of-the-art safety studios, of course, workout space. The left was the Cirque du Soleil workout room. Administrative and conference spaces, because we know that, of course, just like with the school district, you need to have that back-end administration. We asked each of them what was their biggest need if they could build again, and they all said storage. And then, of course, we looked at lobby spaces and gathering spaces in all different ways so that we can bring together those groups to see the students and their progress in our performances. So here in Sarasota, Florida, obviously, we are on a 2.2-acre campus that is adjacent to the Sarasota High School. We're so proud of our partnership with the high school and the school district. This is an aerial view of how you can see the arena currently, where we are there. And this is the proposed view from our architects. Again, all architectural renderings just designed to show you how we can enhance that 2.2 acres and build around it so that we could complete additional multi-purpose space and educational space, mainly to house our 2 magnet programs, but also to enhance these educational programs moving forward. And so we would be building, obviously, on that 2.2 acres, the spaces to house administration, future multi-space purposes, and an education center. And there you see the education center being of greatest need in the red. And then administration would be on the second floor of that. So our goals. A 21st century performing arts and education venue right here in Sarasota, Florida. World-class youth circus arts training facility. It would unify our campus, supporting circus arts education, production, and rehearsal. It's a campus that honors Sarasota's rich cultural heritage of the circus arts. It's a practical design utilizing materials that are easily maintained, and it would produce circus arts as a performing art attraction for international students. And what has emerged against a backdrop of an evolving and growing circus arts industry is both the realization that the circus industry needs leadership in America and the realization that circus arts are a rich tool for education and even social good. Our future in the circus arts is aimed at changing the general perception that circus is merely entertainment. Circus arts help people to center their energy and attention on something, and shows that the circus arts holds a myriad of therapeutic benefits as well: fitness, coordination, trust, self-confidence, innovation, and creativity. From professional training to grassroots engagement, our mission is to champion the development of the circus arts as both an industry and an art form. Here's a couple of more images of potentially what could be done on the 2.2 acres. The Circus Arts Conservatory, in partnership with the Sarasota County School District, is uniquely positioned to become the epicenter of circus in America. Approval of a renewed agreement, the 99-year lease, will be an important step forward in the continued growth of our mission. Circus Arts Conservatory programs attract students from circus schools around the country and combine non-traditional educational tools that work with the opportunities for professional training, competition, and performance. Our vision is not only to support the evolution of circus arts, but to take this leadership role in America and worldwide. And together, I believe we can do that. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Mrs. Brown, I'm sure.
You know, I just want to, I want to thank you for your assistance in getting that walk light there in front of your facility, because I know it was great for your, the people who are coming to your shows, but also for our students who get out there, and it was just ridiculous what they had to go through to cross Bay Vista Street, so I appreciate your assistance. I think it's also important to note to this board that when they enhanced their performance area, that $5 million, that was all on their own. They raised those funds. It didn't come from the school district, even though I guess we own it. And I know that there were some problems raising money because of the short term of the lease. And so that's one of the reasons they're coming to us. But someone shared with me one of the letters you received from somebody who had contributed, a former alum of Sailor Circus, and said how that performing in Sailor Circus gave him the confidence to perform in front of an audience. He said that he's now a lawyer and he uses those experiences all the time. And so he really appreciates the confidence that you all built in with him. But it's great for the students, but it's also great for the community.
Thank you.
Tom Edwards?
In my short time here as a school board member, I've been overwhelmingly impressed by your program and its growth and success in the 2 years that I've been here and watching what you've done. I think that people miss I mean, you touched on everything that I have on my list, but you have so much information there, and I just want to sort of highlight for the community some important things that I think are worthy. The science program, I sat in on one of those performances, and you make it fun and entertaining, yet informative and educational. And I think that having education be fun for our students at any point in the course of their career here at Sarasota County Schools is important. I think the other thing Dr. Aspelin and I talked about yesterday is the athleticism and the commitment and the life skills that one gets. When we think of circus, I think we automatically go to performance, which is an important component, but I know what it's like to be an athlete and to commit to that hard work and that pain and that pushing yourself and all of that work. And I think the community doesn't realize how you've managed to embed those life skills into something, once again, that is fun. And those are, as we've heard today, life skills that people take on into other careers. So I'm a big fan. I will do whatever I can to support you. And as from the community, buy your tickets, because those shows are so much fun. We live in tough times for, pandemic, hurricanes, politics, you name it. It's tough times. Go to the Circus, because when you leave there, you'll have a smile on your face.
Thank you.
Bridget Ziegler.
Agreed. Well, I think what's so important is the historical component about what this brings to our community. And I think it's so unique, and I love the way it has been now embedded into the educational aspect. I'm a huge supporter. I love what you guys have done. I think you guys have done the grind and very, very much illustrated that commitment, where it's not coming to someone and asking for that, but you guys have worked really, really hard. So it just is a testament to the commitment and passion you guys have, but I know this community supports that. I support it. And again, even to what Mr. Edwards had just mentioned, when you think about the arts, we have an amazing arts community, but the challenges that they had to face during the pandemic, and even when I was going to look over your financials, you guys still did pretty impressively well, knowing that you were still closed for quite some time. So, I applaud your ability to pivot and keep moving forward, but very excited to continue to support you guys. So,
Thank you.
Well, I too am in support of this, and we've talked about it for a number of years. I just am amazed at, I went to the Circus before the air conditioning, and it wasn't pleasant sometime in the May timeframe. But the venue for many things that take place there now is so wonderful, because we're such short space in this community of having space that's able to accommodate large events, fundraising events and galas and so forth. And it's just a wonderful place. Pineview had their event there last year, and it was really, really remarkable. I enjoyed it so much. But you have worked your tails off for all these years, and my heart goes out, my gratitude goes out to you, because you've meant a lot to students. I go to Panera's over across the street, and I always am talking to students who are waiting to go in. And this is a significant impact in our students' lives, and all of the things that everyone's mentioned, the confidence that it ensues, and the wonderful things that we know happen when students are recognized and have the ability of achieving not only the physicality of it, but the confidence that it causes them to have is just remarkable. I'm very close still to Caroline Zucker and her grandsons, and they're still, on a trajectory to do great things, and a lot of that was from the confidence that they received participating. So David Jones and I were together last night chatting a little bit about this. So I am in favor of, and approving this at our next board meeting. My hat goes off to you. I think you've done remarkable work for our students. And I see this with this new center that you're proposing. Education will grow and grow into STEAM and other things that I think are very marketable for students for a lifetime. So my hat goes off to you, and I thank you for all that you've done for this great community.
Thank you.
Brendan?
Yes, I wanted to say thank you as well. I know that, my visits out there have been fantastic, and seeing the students who are out there, the Booker Middle School students and the Sarasota High students, and all that they are doing out there, and they're just so excited to be there and learning everything from balance, confidence, working on their core, and the athleticism that it takes. It's just remarkable. But I really like the Cirque du Soleil wall with the trampolines there and the holes in the wall. I really want to do that. I don't know, somebody said we can't do that because of our insurance doesn't cover that. I'm not sure, but we'll look into that and make sure we have our workout clothes next time we get out there, Jody, and participate. But yes, it's fantastic, and we'll have it on the 15th board meeting.
Right.
It'll be on there for a vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a construction update. Jody Dumas, you can sit still. And we're going to talk about the new Lorraine Road K8 and Goshio's building replacement. Two exciting new projects.
Absolutely, and so we've got our team from construction planning and our general contractor and our architects coming up. So I think what you're going to see on this agenda is a building, kind of a layering of things we're going to talk about this morning and then finally talk a little bit about the CIP, and this is the first step in that. And so I wanted to focus on two projects really that are up and running right now through the design process and are at the point that they're being priced. And so first and foremost, our team that's on our new Lorraine Road K8 is here in front of you today to talk about where we are in the project. Hopefully in the read ahead, you got a first look at what the proposed layout might look like, and so that's been a lot of work behind the scenes in terms of getting that laid out on paper and a plan ready to go. So with that, let me turn it over to our Director of Construction, Jane Dreger.
Good morning, board members. Good morning, board members. Happy to be here today to talk about a couple of projects. Starting with the K8 at Clark and Lorraine, we issued contracts to our architect and our construction manager. You all approved those in May, and immediately thereafter, we started meeting with all of the stakeholders. The desired school will have 1,530 student stations, with the possibility of adding to that in the future. So our core spaces will be able to accommodate 1,800. The school is going to be a single building with a secure campus. About 195,000 square feet. We're tweaking that to get it as Sarasota prototype as possible. The emphasis will be on STEAM and robotics. The schematic design and design development are complete. We will have the construction documents complete in January. But I wanted to share with you, I know that you all have been paying particular attention to this because this is kind of the state of our country at the moment, but we've had some significant challenges with this project. Hurricane Ian making landfall, resources were rediverted to the most damaged schools. The construction manager on this project actually assisted us with Toledo, Blade, Taylor Ranch, and Garden Elementary schools, getting those opened. And then we've had some site constraints. So the site is a low elevation. We knew that we were going to have pretty significant fill requirements for this project. We've worked with the civil engineer to maximize the fill that we can get on site. We have 3 large wetlands, which kind of bisected the site, and they're not particularly high quality wetlands, but we are avoiding them nonetheless. We have been able to fit everything that we need on the site without impacting those wetlands. The current zoning of the property is open use rural. We are in the rezone process to get it to government use, which gives us the most flexibility for the space and the most opportunity to improve the space improve the site for our needs. Roadways and utilities do not exist at the north and south sides of this campus. Per our purchase agreement, we are obligated to put in the north access road to our access point on that road. The south road is going to be a much bigger arterial road, 2 lanes in each direction with some multimodal bike ped path and sidewalk requirements, pretty extensive landscaping. But I'll let the designer talk more about how we worked our site right now to work for what will happen in the future. We also had a new ICC 500 is a new code for enhanced hurricane protection areas, and due to the wind load that we are in, there are no operable windows that currently meet the large missile impact for our wind load. So we worked really diligently with the Sarasota County emergency folks. Ed McCrane has been really great in understanding and communicating with the state about our intents for this. The idea is that we want to maximize the number of residents that we can house in one single building facility. It's easier for them to manage shelters in that way. And so we have really made every effort to give 100% of the applicable spaces to that purpose.
Jane, may I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
You said that we have a lot of low area, and we're going to have to use maximum fill for this site. Do we know that before the Hurricane Ian happened? Do we know that we had really low?
Yes.
So we've always known that this was not
Yes.
something that we
Yes.
saw. Because I was going to say, well, great if it was after, at least
Yeah.
we knew it before we started building, right? So we've
and-
always known that was a problem.
Yes, and having it be a shelter made the requirements even more because we had to build it up a bit higher. So our civil engineer has been really working hard to make the ponds on site, the retainage areas, as large and as deep as possible so that we can get the most fill from the site. It's not completely balanced, but our team really pushed them in that direction. And then the last item, and I don't mean for it to be a catch-all because it's probably the most important, is construction costs, material lead times, supply chain, product availability, and labor shortages just continue to plague us. Like it is, again, I've been doing this for 35 years and I have never seen it this bad. And so where we are today, I will let the team talk about, I'll introduce the team. Steve Johnson is the Executive Vice President of Harvard Jolly Architects, one of the premier architects for K-12 throughout the state of Florida. And he'll talk to you about how we got to where we are in the design and some things that we did to make it Sarasota's prototype. And then Nathan Renner, Senior Project Manager for Tandem Construction. They've done lots of work with us, and I'll let him talk about how we developed the budget so that you can understand the depth and the detail that was put into it. Steve?
Great, thank you, Jane. Good morning, members of the board. I don't know, do you have the site plan in front of you on your screen? Do we have that?
They've
Or are
got
we
paper
not?
copies of it. It
Paper
was in the read ahead. Yep.
Okay, great. Okay. So on the overall site plan, that's your 65-acre site. Just for orientation, as you're looking at that image, on the right-hand side is Lorraine Road, and that would connect up to Clark Road, which is off of the page to the north. So as Jane mentioned, there is, in conjunction with the surrounding, future residential growth and development, there will be an east-west road to the north of the site and to the south of the site. And so what we did was in the spirit of maximizing the ability to use the site and balancing for site development cost, we oriented this school with the entrance facing down and to the right. So that is kind of off of the main parking lot area there. And what that also did was we sort of strategically stayed away from those existing three wetland areas to further reduce site development costs. So on balance, the rest of it's a single building. I'll go through the floor plans in just the next couple of pages here. But we have all of your site amenities, track and field, space for portable classrooms should you need them in the future, an area for future growth if a classroom addition was needed, all of those basic components. Lots of car queuing on site. Went through an exhaustive exercise on that to run the numbers and make sure we have plenty of queuing space on site. So with that, I'll go to the first floor plan on the next page. As Jay mentioned, this is an adapted prototype. So we started with a St. John's K-8 plan. That is a 3-story building. We've modified this to be a 2-story building. And what that does for us is it allows us to have all the primary grade levels on the first floor and all the intermediate grade levels on the second floor. So as we look at the first floor plan, and this was a pretty extensive collaborative effort with all of the stakeholders. We're talking safety and security group, IT, food and nutritional services, instructional services, student services, everyone that has an impact on what this school needs to be really got us to the point where we're at now. It's your prototype. It's your K-8 prototype. So we've improved it at a lot of different moments in the floor plan, particularly with wayfinding the way that staff and students will use the building. So we're real proud of that process we went through. And just as a kind of an orientation, high level, there's 2 wings, and those are stacked. So first and second floor off to the left and off to the top. And then the core spaces on the school, in the center on the bottom of that image is the administrative suite. So it's a single point of entry. You come up, approach the school, enter through that single point of entry, the reception. Above administration is media center, which has a presence out on the open secured play fields up to the top left. And as we go around clockwise, from the media center, we have the gymnasium over the top right, and below that is food service. Kind of in between those spaces are band music and art spaces as well. And then if you go to the next page, which is the second floor, again, those in the spirit of efficiency and development costs for the school, the overall shell of the building, we stacked those classroom wings. And in the center of that is a pretty special program spaces. That's the STEAM and the robotics that Jane mentioned, which is kind of a feature component in the middle of that program. And then on the bottom of that page, there's a image that represents that robotics lab, kind of the vision for what that would be. So we're in construction documents right now. We'll be finalizing the drawings heading into the early part of next year, and proud of the collaborative process that we went through to get to this point.
And Nathan, you want to talk about how we got to the budget?
Sure. Good morning. Thank you. So we have run basically 2 budgets on the project so far. As Jane kind of referenced, the times we're in are unlike others that we've seen in the past. I know there's been some discussions previously. One of the things that we've done through budgeting this project, when we initially looked at the project and looked at some historical numbers a year ago when this school was coming out, the numbers were kind of your square foot looks close. As we come through and we start budgeting, and we've seen our highs and lows from the pandemic and coming back through into construction, we've kind of fine-tuned the way we do our budgets and our estimates. So back when it was we build a school or a type of office building at a square foot cost, and that's how we can budget it, carry it through before we build it or finish the design. As we come through and bringing over the prototype K-8 that was St. John's and has been modified to meet Sarasota County Schools as a prototype, we've taken all of those fits and finishes that we know that this district uses for long-term facility maintenance. We've put those in a schematic design timeline. We not only looked at some historical numbers, but those couldn't be used. We brought in subcontractors. So our major trades of structural steel, our structure contractors, concrete, mechanical, electrical, we brought in the trade contractors to look at these plans before they're done, but to talk through the design and get some current day pricing. So from a schematic design timeline, that's when we said, okay, here's where this current building in these current market conditions, that's what the price is becoming. As then we get that report, we look at those numbers. Are some in alignment? Are some not in alignment? We brought back to the team. We're looking at finishes. We're looking at materials. We're looking at processes and procedures in addition to long lead times. Are there things that we can buy now and use later and save some time? We're continuing those discussions today. I think Jane alluded to, we're looking to do an early release package in January before our final design is done, but so that we can get moving all of the site work and get all of the infrastructure for utilities in because of the lead time for that material. So the more efficient we can make our construction timeline and purchases is how we can help control costs. So from today going forward, we've run a second budget, taking some and modifying the design with the design team and getting input from local trade contractors and manufacturers. We've gotten to where the pricing on this scope of the building right now on our second budget is where we thought it would land. So we are now reporting to you saying, here is the box that we're in and the known unknowns that we have today of where the market is, where the market's going, and when we can lock prices in after the beginning of the year and move forward. This budget and this design is what the school and a Sarasota County school prototype is going to have. We looked at some other budget options that may or may not work for if we need to reduce and cut scope, kind of in the budget list here. But for the prototype K-8, this new budget has all of the Sarasota County schools boxes checked.
So as we have this conversation, I think there are two issues that are kind of coming to the forefront that I think you're hearing behind the team. One is the budget has increased since the last time you saw the CIP. We were sitting at $85 million, and we are currently at $105 million. And I think the team, they can speak to how confident they are in that current pricing. My apologies that we've come back several times on this particular project, but unfortunately that's the reality that we're in at this particular point. So that's one issue. Wanted to make sure we talked to you about that today, and that'll be on the CIP and the conversation we have here in a little bit. But then the other piece is timeline is pushed a little bit. And so we were hoping to get it open over the summer of 24, thanks. And that is pushed a little bit, and now we're talking about like October, November, maybe December of 24. Obviously, that's not a great time to open a new school, and so what we'd be looking at is pushing to summer of 25 for the opening. And so those are the two issues before you today, pushing the opening a little bit just because of the circumstances we're under in terms of getting this thing up and rolling, but then certainly to talk a little bit about budget. Maybe the team could talk a little bit about just specifically once we knew we were over the $85 million, what is the process that we went through in terms of making sure it fits and finishes? There was nothing priced into the school that was not reasonable with what we've always been doing. Looking at those alternatives in terms of what we can get for materials versus what we can't get, tilt wall versus block. Talk a little bit more about the process you guys went through as a team and making sure that that 105 was a true 105 and it couldn't be, say, 90 or something like that. So, Jane,
We have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Bridget?
Oh, no, go ahead. You go ahead. I'll wait, and then I'll summarize.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I became the blonde tornado, and I demanded that they get to the budget and explain to me how they could get to the budget. We collaboratively and collectively decided that that wasn't enough. It wasn't a couple $1 million that we could have done the typical value engineering, but it really required rolling up our sleeves and figuring out what are things that we maybe could do at a later date or could be eliminated and shared with another facility. And so we did an exhaustive approach to get to the budget. And really where it boiled down to was to get to the original budget, we would have had to delete all of the athletic amenities, which really benefit the middle school programs. We would have had to delete the gymnasium, which would have also impacted the hurricane shelter in addition to the middle school curriculum that PE is in a gym. We would have had to reduce square footage, which meant we would have had to either made our classrooms much smaller, which we are allowed to do, but is not our normal way to do things, and reduce capacity of the school, cut square footage in classrooms, and we looked at alternative building materials. And we went through pretty rigorous pricing exercises for each of those options, and we came back with 3 plans. We called it the $70 million construction, the $80 million construction, and the $90 million construction, and what each of those plans was. We met with Jody. He really felt like we really couldn't do the 70 because we need a gym. We need those athletic facilities. It is part of the program. It would be part of the draw or in or out of the school. And so we proceeded with the $90 million construction, which is the 105 total project budget, because their construction number doesn't include the furniture, the technology, the design, and those sorts of things. So that's really how we did it. I'd like for you to take a minute and hear the construction manager, because they actually hit the streets like it was really truly bidding and got 3 sub numbers in almost every category, identified the areas where we had the biggest concern and what alternatives could we do to that. We took about a month to go through that process to really make sure that when we brought it to you, you understood what we had gone through.
And I would say the last piece of your read ahead, Diane has kind of worked through, as you know, obviously as we push the building from an opening of August 24 to August of 25, well, then you've got more students on campus in some of those schools where we're trying to relieve that overcapacity piece, Ashton, Sarasota Middle, Lakeview. And so there's a piece in here regarding kind of the updated numbers in terms of what we're planning for on these campuses, just so you can see that although we don't want to push off the date, it is doable. And so I don't know if Diane's here, if you got any questions in terms of what those numbers look like on those campuses, again, that we're trying to relieve with this new project. So with that, I turn it over for questions for the team.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Do you want me?
Bridget?
Okay, sorry, no, to cue again. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you. I know this is Jane, as you said, you've been doing this for 35 years, and this is beyond anything you've seen. I think we all recognize that. Also, I wanted to thank Tandem. I think I want to recognize you guys for the work you guys did after the hurricane was incredible. Really, truly, thank you for that. It really just shows that having local partners really makes a huge difference. So, but going to this, my only question when we talked about the initial student station number was 1530, but we're building it to potentially go up to 1800. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. What is Laurel Nokomis's current? That just seems so large, but I also know it's a K-8. So I don't know if Dr. Aspen, you know what Laurel Nokomis is, or if you know that you.
Yeah, their total capacity is 1763.
Okay, so it's right around there. Okay, so it just sounded large, and I know when we think about some of our schools about what's that tipping point and when it gets too large. Okay, because the other question was going to be, I personally do not support us removing a gymnasium. I think the athletics is a very important part of our children's health as well. So my other question was, as far as when you did these different scenarios, if we were to decrease the size of the classroom just as an evaluation, what kind of financial impact did that yield? Was it substantial? Was that one of the 70, 80, and 90?
That was a piece
scenarios?
of the 70, 80, 90. So what we did was we have about 840 right now square foot for the middle school classrooms, and 780 for the elementary school classrooms. DOE lets us go as small as 650. We don't have any 650s. We looked at kind of across the district what we have.
They are smaller now than when the design started. The classrooms are now smaller, kind of through that design process. For some constructability is there were bump outs on the building of restrooms. And what we say in construction, every corner costs dollars. Mm-hmm. So working together with Harvard Jolly, we pulled those restrooms into the classrooms. And so what that did is that not only decreased square footage, the classroom still functions, still fits all of the needs of desks and teaching, but then we have kind of a straight wall that now is, from a constructability and efficiency standpoint, from bare bones construction, little cheaper and easier to do. So that kind of feeds into the reduced cost, not only reducing square footage, but more efficient construction.
Okay. Well, I just feel like we're in a tough spot. So, I mean, that's where I'm coming from. I think evaluating it that way, I mean, that would be the one area if we can make it smaller, but I also want them to be, I don't want to be short-sighted. And then the final question was, since we have more than one construction project, I know that there's different, I know we haven't finalized some of I think the PSSC for that, but when you talk about inventory, and the pre-sub aspect was amazing, so thank you, because I think it's really hard to predict what this looks like because there is no model, historically speaking. But when I've talked to from other large projects, not necessarily building schools, but there have been larger purchases on materials so that you can hedge against the future. What does that look like for us?
We do that with flooring. We buy in huge quantities of flooring for all of our flooring types. We have a flooring matrix for the district. We purchase those directly, and we have really great relationships with those vendors who provide the lowest quotes. So that is absolutely something that we do. And the other piece will be on projects like this, getting those contracts written early to lock in prices, especially prices that have been projecting upwards. So right now, our focus is metal and concrete. Wood isn't as big of an issue as it was, but metal and concrete right now are.
And so is that something in practice we can purchase more, essentially, is where I'm saying, like we do with the flooring, or is that not cost advantageous?
We absolutely could.
Okay.
I think that's probably something worth looking into.
Okay.
And lock pricing in earlier.
Right, and that's what I'm saying for other projects, so we're not sitting, I mean, it may be an investment here if we have the capital to do it, but then because we can utilize that for other projects, that's just my question. Do we have the ability and capacity and storage space? I mean,
So somewhat, but we have to like design, get to the point that we can do it. Like, so for example, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but switchgear, right? So electrical components, switchgear, things like that are way out, right? So as soon as they have design on electrical components done, normally we might, and speak to this, Nathan, we might purchase that at some point during the project. We might push that design a little quicker, and we'll buy that early for this project. Now, we can't push that learning ahead to the next K8 because design changed a little bit. But within each project, we can pull stuff as quick as possible. Does that make sense?
yeah, no, I was hoping for the other part. It's okay, thank you.
Yeah, from a construction standpoint, what we're looking to do for our January, our early release package, anything that we talk about the design won't be 100% when we bring that GMP. So what we're going to do is, if we can lock in the electrical gear, we can purchase that early and kind of benefit cost and then lead time. HVAC equipment, things like that. We'll be looking at all of those major items early on that we can maybe lock in prior to final design.
Tom Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me start off by saying I have the utmost of confidence of our architectural firm and our contractors. It's not an accident that I was involved in helping us get a trades academy up and running, because that gave me some prelude to talking to our folks and our partners in that process. And of course, Jane, you always have the bottom line front and center. A couple things that I want to say, and that's evident, by the way, in terms of just listening to how you've proactively been on the front end of pricing and trying to lock in things. I know Nathan and I have had conversations along the way from the Pineview build that I was like already beginning to worry about where the supply chain issues and all those things. Quite honestly, I would tell you that when we were at 85 million, in those first couple conversations that we had on the dais, in my mind, I put 125 million. I'm happy to hear we're at 105 million. So that's the good news. The other part that's a little concerning about this conversation, which I think everybody has to be aware of, including those of us on the dais, there's a lot of moving parts. It's not just about the design. It's not just about trying to find all the ways to be cost effective. It's the cost of money, which is skyrocketing because of interest rates. So it's a lot of moving parts, and then thrown into that is Ian, and we've got dollars tied up before we get reimbursements from FEMA and insurance, and where we fall in self-insurance. So there's a lot of moving parts about these builds and these renovations that I think the public needs to be aware of. It's not as simple as just nailing down the design and coming up with a budget. And I appreciate, I don't want to minimize what you're doing because it's impactful and I appreciate it. But like I said, there's so many more moving parts that are connected to that. So I love the current day pricing model that I heard today. What could go wrong? That's my question.
We actually prepared for that question because last night I said to these guys, if you were our board members, what questions would you have, and how can we prepare to answer them or at least address their concerns? Right now, we have concerns about site work and structure. Pretty much everything else, we feel very confident that our design is complete enough and we are far enough along in the process and we have subcontractor participation. Those are our two unknowns. And so I guess I would ask the experts what they could say about that, and what kind of contingency plan do we have in the 105 number now.
So from a cost standpoint, and what could come sideways and kind of kind of push us off our plan. We're coming up to the end of a year. That is a typical cost increase for all manufacturers. We're going to have about 13,000 yards of concrete. Concrete's going for about $175 a yard placed. So it's one of our big numbers. So part of the discussion of locking in a concrete price and also knowing what the cost of cement is going to do after January 1. The suppliers have an idea, but they don't know till it happens. What we've done before we came to you is we have included in the $90 million that we've got, or in this current budget, is we still have some cost escalation in there. We still have a safety factor just in there for cost escalation that then when we get to our final GMP, that's at zero, so the number's the number. But instead of saying today's dollar is it and today's pricing, there is that cost escalation percentage in there for those types of items. And based on our discussions, not only with the subcontractors, but with the suppliers, 42-inch concrete reinforced pipe that is a 14-week lead time, we not only know what it costs today, we're having discussions on when we place an order, what is the rest of the community doing and what are the developers doing in this region that's going to either help us or hurt us in February when we want to order our pipe. So we started having those discussions. There is only a handful of suppliers of that type of thing. So that's kind of where we get our confidence is the current situations, what we're doing, and we've got some other schools that have gone through this just a step before us, and we're following that lead, and that trend is the same trend that we're following because it's fitting out on other projects right now. So very confident in this number. There are a few things that could come sideways. We all know that the unknown unknowns are the ones that catch us, but we have consistently carried some safety factor in our real current day pricing with our back check to historical pricing in all of our estimates. And we're very proud of when we have our multiple estimates on a job, they are very consistent, usually within a couple % of each other. So we don't look to change that for this project.
So, Tom, and the short answer to that is if you could control the cost of cement and diesel in the next 6 months, we are absolutely confident that we can do it.
Thanks, Jane. I have one last quick question. Sorry, Madam Chair. You talked about we have to raise elevation for the shelter. Is there funding that the state supplies for shelter reinforcement for those types of things?
It's a tricky question. Mm-hmm. The answer is we are required to provide 50% of our applicable spaces as shelter spaces. Anything over and above that is kind of optional, and we've been working with Ed McCrane, and he has offered to pay some. Yeah. So our team's next strategy is to figure out what that 50% is that we're obligated to provide, and what is the upcharge to make it 100%, and what does that equate to in number of shelter spaces. So if it's 1,200 is the 50%, we are obligated to provide shelter for. If we could get to 100%, does that give us 2,400 spaces, and what is that worth, and what is the generator going to be required to run, and we're in that analysis process right now.
I think it's really important that we identify those costs specifically since we're right there, because I know, quite frankly, through the consortium that there are coastal school districts that are, if it's not us this time, it's going to be, as we hear, a coastal storm across the state, perhaps this week. So that if we're all being required to do this kind of reinforcement that costs, it does cost. And can we put on a legislative agenda that these are important dollars to focus in on coastal districts as they're enhancing their legislative approach to funding education. So I would like, if we can, to identify those costs. If we can even backtrack a bit for some of the hardening that we've done along the way, that would be helpful, just from a legislative point of view, to have those conversations. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Good point, Tom. Shirley Brown.
I have two things. One of them is sort of on the lines of what Mr. Edwards said, and that is during a storm, keeping electricity going during the storm. Some people have said that they had, solar. And because they're solar, they didn't run out of electricity. They didn't have any problems. Of course, then there's the generators. I would like to know, especially when you all get together with other districts, when you're talking about these storms, I mean, is there any way that the state or other organizations can help us pay either for, and I don't even know if solar would work during a storm. It worked in a home, but, we've got different things. But, I think that's something that we need to look at is not only building, but then what are we going to do after we build? And that's, I think, the electricity during a storm. I mean, that's very key. I think it has to be required in every, and you put that on our legislative agenda, that that there should be a requirement for electricity or backup electricity sources. At the very least, let these people have, a light to get to the bathroom and a, hot cup of coffee in the morning. Of course, we've even tried to provide hot meals. But the other thing, I wanted to follow up. Did you say that something about the bathrooms? What were you doing different about the bathrooms?
It was layout of the classrooms themselves. The bathrooms were just the building wall jogged, so the bathroom was on the outside edge of the classroom. Now it's within the rectangle or the square.
Oh, so we're still keeping the bathrooms
yes,
in the
ma'am.
class.
Yes,
If
ma'am.
we're moving bathrooms out of the classrooms, that just opens a whole new ball of wax. Is that true even for the middle schools? We're going to have bathrooms?
Bathrooms?
In classrooms?
No.
Group toilets for the middle school grades and bathrooms in the classrooms for elementary.
All that's driven by educational building specifications, building code, depending on the grade level.
Yeah, well, I just know middle school bathrooms and high school bathrooms present their own problems.
They do.
Yes, perhaps a discussion for another time, but I think this is all very well done, and I'm glad that we're not taking away the gymnasium and the athletics. If we had looked at this many years ago, we probably would have built a central athletics facilities for our schools like they do in Texas, a great stadium and a great track, and it's really, it saves a lot of money. But, that doesn't or hasn't worked here, so. But I think the athletic portion, and then of course, the costs are not probably going to come down. This is not a temporary thing from what I'm hearing in the economic forecast. We're looking at, some very big concerns with how long this will last. And so if we postpone building it today, what will it cost later? Probably double. So, if not a little less than that. But I think that this is a great plan for a school. I think it's a very exciting plan. And this came to us, Dr. Asplin, from St. John's? So
Yes.
you've seen this school in actuality?
Yes, there's I think 9 or 10 now K8s in St. John's, and there's quite a few of those. This particular prototype. It allows you to, as we said, wetlands is a problem in Florida, right? But this design allows you to twist it, move it around so that you can eliminate the wetlands problem as much as possible, which is great because it helps us with funding that we wouldn't have to move a wetland because that's very expensive. And so and it seems to work really well in St. John's.
And just so you know, on design, we looked at K-8 designs across the state, and the team, actually, one of them here sitting here today, settled on that design. But it was we spent a lot of time looking at designs across the state to pick the best one for Sarasota County. Ended up with St. John's, but
I'm glad you said that. I wanted to make sure I had nothing to do with this design. I did not go on the trips. I said, go do what you think, whatever you need to do. Here are the counties that have them, and they came back with this. One thing I wanted to ask you, Jody, real quickly is we have 14 shelters, and how many actually have generators again? 2 or 3?
Yeah, so we only have a few with generators. Our main ones with generators are our medical needs shelters, and so that's Tatum Ridge, and it's Lamarck and Cranberry. We also have a smaller generator at Northport High that runs some of the electrical. We have one at Rivie that runs some of the electrical, but the big generators actually run AC, and everything else are at our medical needs shelters. And so part of the conversation is, generators are super expensive to install, maintain over time, and so I think it's a very good idea as part of the agenda and talking about a comprehensive, what does a hurricane sheltering look like, funding from somewhere to help support some of that moving forward.
And in this build, is a generator included in this build?
No, not at this point, because I don't believe this is a medically fragile shelter. This is Gen Pop, right?
We have a generator included, but just for life safety, emergency, and cooler freezer.
Yeah, not a full, kind of a minimal, not a full. The school's not going to run full.
Okay.
We'll have
Partial
lights
generator.
to the bathroom. Was that you, Mrs. Brown? Somebody said lights, lights to the bathroom.
Yeah.
We will have that, but we will not have air conditioning and full cooking.
Right. And I think, Jody, at one point you told me to retrofit one. It was like over $1 million. That's why I say it probably is cheaper to include it in the build if possible.
Oh, yeah.
In case we do need to make it a medically fragile. You don't know. Later on, we might have to have that as a medical fragile, but something to look at. And if it's 500,000 instead of $1 million, we might as well do it now and not come back later. But anyway, that's just a thought.
Bridget?
Yes, thank you. No, I know, as was mentioned, and I know Diane, I had said when we were talking about convocation, it kind of lines up with this now. The timing of it is not so great because session will already be started, so these conversations should already be happening. But working when we have all of the different county municipalities and emergency management, hopefully we do a debrief, this would be something I think makes a lot of sense to have that conversation, because what I had suggested was not just us included on our legislative platform, but also have them assist and lobby for it, whatever we come up with that remedy is, so that, because we all benefit from it. So if there is any kind of appropriation for coastal counties, et cetera, that have more of a burden when it comes to shelters, that's definitely something we should probably get a sense of. But again, convocation is probably January or February. Session starts January, so the conversations start now or yesterday. But just something we want to think about and push our county people to do as well. So.
Well, thank you all.
Chair Goodwin, I just wanted to mention that most of the team can kind of step off now. I just want to hold Jane back for a minute because the other project, much quicker. We want to highlight obviously the K8, but Goshio, we're adding a wing down there, replacing building 3. It's replacing all the portables down there. They're at the same point in terms of pricing, and when we get to the capital budget, you're going to see a slight increase on Goshio. So while Jane's here, Jane, if you want to just talk quickly about that project, and you guys can kind of step off. So thanks, guys.
Thank you. So for Goshio Elementary School, we kicked that one off a year ago with the architect's contract and the contractor's contract. We also looked at our comprehensive facility assessment that was done just at about that time to make sure that the scope was the best for Goshio Elementary. We brought that back to you. Building 3 will be a one-story, approximately 36,000 square feet. That will replace the 18 classroom portables on the site that have been there for quite some time. We will be consolidating music and art spaces, which have kind of been scattered throughout. We'll be providing some labs. We will be locating pre-K and kindergarten all in Building 1. They also have been kind of sprinkled throughout the campus. Enlarging the clinic, because as that school grew by the 18 portables, the clinic never grew. We'll be securing the campus with perimeter fencing, and we'll be fixing a lot of site work and drainage issues and parking and queuing issues on site, and replacing the covered play area and providing perimeter fencing where it does not currently exist. We've had all the same challenges on this project. It's not a shelter, so we didn't have those concerns, but the site constraints have been an issue. There's a lot of traffic in that area and crossing guard issues, and the Building 1 and the existing Building 3 are very close to the Goshio, the street, and figuring out how to get buses or cars in and out of there without jamming up the traffic on the street. So our team has done a really good job of incorporating all of that and making it kind of a comprehensive campus. When we were $3.7 million over budget, I did the same thing, asked them to go through the exercise and discuss what we could do to get to the budget in terms of cutting square feet out of the new building, not doing a new covered play area. We couldn't leave the covered play area where it was because that's where the new building 3 needs to go. Otherwise, the covered play area would be the front of the school, which you absolutely don't want for security purposes. And so we did value engineering. This is, I don't know if you all recall, we were going to do the insulated concrete form system, the ICF, which we went up to Bay County to see. It's a really energy efficient and very secure construction technique that we wanted to try in Sarasota County. Many of those buildings are left standing when there's a hurricane. Bay County builds completely with them. Now, we did not take that out because we really wanted to test that here. And so where we ultimately ended up was I presented Jody with some options. We had some conversations, and where we are is that we'd like to leave the whole scope intact. This one is a bit further ahead. The construction documents are set to be complete this month, and we hope to be bringing an early release package to you all in December to get those things ordered, and we'll be completing the project in 2023. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you might have.
And that takes us from a project budget of about 25 to right about 20, a little over 25, I believe 26, to about 29, which is reflected in the CIP that we sent you. But just wanted to make sure that was on your radar too, as these things get priced in real dollars, what we're talking about. So anyway, open for questions on GoShow if there are any.
Shirley Brown.
Mine isn't a question, but, an attaboy. I remember several years ago when we talked about when we're building and the costs of construction and how we decided that we're not looking at just the initial cost, but the cost over time. So we know that when we invest in a little more money up front, rather than having something that's going to last for 3 years, like the carpeting, we got something that's going to last for 7, 8, or 10 years for some of the flooring. So, I mean, I really appreciate you continuing to keep those things in mind, and again, not only the cost to build it, but to operate it, like even having the bathrooms in the classrooms. I mean, I know that's probably more expensive than building, a set of bathrooms for the elementary classes, but it helps. So I really, really want to thank you for doing that, Jody, for always keeping your mind and your thoughts on the whole process, not just the single one that's in front of you. I really appreciate what you're doing, and thank you.
On. There we go. I mean, my green light was on. So Jane and Diane Caminati and Don Hampton, they run in a team. They travel in packs, and that's really what you want in terms of those 3 departments, and they're always working together and focused on those things. And then, our architects and our engineers and our design teams, our general contractors know exactly what we want in these buildings. So anyway, it's a team effort is what I'm saying. So, but thank you.
Well, I'm very partial to GoShow. Have spent a good bit of time there. I can't see you, Jody. Excuse me for being rude. But I've spent a great deal of time there with their pre-K classes and so forth. And I think this whole structure of moving and aligning classes together, all the pre-K, all the kindergarten classes, moving the labs and so forth, I think that is a great deal for the teachers and for the students as well. So, GoShow is a great school. They're doing some wonderful things for students and many of our students who really need a hand up. And so I know the problem with the swamp, as I call it. I mean, it's spongy. There's some spots there that you can walk through that are, a little bit wet, but not a lot wet. But I just think this is a great opportunity. I said something to someone in the community about, we're looking at Goshio. Goshio's going to happen. And they go, well, how would it take so long? I said, you have no idea what our staff goes through in making these things happen. So I'm really ecstatic about this. Tom Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I still want to talk about the fact that there are a lot of moving parts, and each one of these conversations are being presented in silos. And we have a capital improvement plan, and that's larger than just these projects. And if we could afford to do all of them, which we've already approved, I'm on board with that. But I'm still cautious that we should be looking at not just these two projects that have already budget enhancements, but an overall guesstimate of what budget enhancements this board is looking at least over this coming year, if not the following year, so that we have a better understanding of timelines and approvals and groundbreakings and all that kind of stuff, because it's a big school district, and they're not silos. It's, we have one bottom line. So if we can get some sort of snapshot of that, it would be greatly appreciated.
The questions?
So I maybe just commented, so perfect segue, and what I said is that this workshop's going to build, right? And so this next conversation about hurricane damage and CIP, I think we'll pull some of that together for you, Mr. Edwards.
So next up, we have the update to the CIP, better known as the Capital Improvement Plan.
Bonnie Penner. All right, so Bonnie Penner, our CFO, is going to come into the conversation here, and we're going to keep Jane as part of this conversation. But Mr. Edwards, exactly to your point, I think where we want to go next in the conversation is talk a little bit about what we're seeing from the storm and what we think that recovery effort looks like, and then transition into the CIP conversation in terms of how these things all kind of come together, not only this year but in our 5-year kind of projection. So with that, maybe I'll kind of kick it off and talk a little bit about where we are in the recovery efforts. Earlier in the conversation about the K-8, Jane Dreger mentioned Tandem Construction. We're a key organization on the ground for us, boots on the ground in South County. We utilize all of our contractors that we could to get us back up and running in South County, and so we're looking very, very good in terms of where we are in terms of our buildings, right, having them reopen. Not everything is complete, permanent, repaired permanently. Some of our roofing in place is temporary roofing that we'll have to come back and redo, and I know Jane and team and Don are all working on those efforts. So all of that's happening as we speak. Our insurance teams have been out since a few days after the storm. The adjusters have been touring with our staff, sometimes schools several times, just because of the scope of the damage, make sure they understand where that is. Talked with Lynn Peterson this morning. She had a conversation with the team this morning, and I know Jane, you and Don were on with the adjusters recently. We are still probably a week away till getting a scope of the damage from the estimating team from the insurance company. So again, as soon as we have that, obviously, Dr. Aspen will pass that to you. But again, we're still about a week away from that. We had a lot of damage in a lot of our sites, and so it just takes a long time to be able to cost all of that, make sure they understand all of it, and need to get that right. So again, we're about a week away from that. But what we can provide from you today is kind of where we are in terms of our spending. And I know several emails have gone out in terms of some of the emergency spending that we did, and you're aware of that. But we can summarize that here for you today and kind of talk a little bit about what our insurance will cover and then what we think FEMA will cover as we head into this year. So with that, we've we've got in South County through our design build contractors, the Tandems of the world, we've got about $15 million under contract with them for the initial recovery efforts and getting school back up and running, and some of the initial design on the roof projects moving forward. We have roof repairs at Heron Creek and at Lamarck that have to be done. So we've got about $15 million out there with that. We've got another I would say a couple of million in debris removal, which is going on right now. The big trucks that you see running around in all the community picking up all the debris, they're processing our facilities too, and so we've got contracts in place with those companies. So that's another couple million there. And then we obviously we've got other smaller repairs around the district with tree companies and places like that, and entities like that have been partnering with us. So all said and done, my thoughts are we're probably going to be around $30-35 million in terms of total repairs, cost to repair, get back up and running. Again, we got to wait for our insurance companies, but just in terms of contracts we have out there now, things I know that are still coming, I would say that's probably a comfortable place for us to throw an estimate at right now. So keep that in mind. And so, Bonnie, you want to talk a little bit about FEMA and where you guys are with that particular process?
Sure. So FEMA requires that we first reach out to our insurance company and have the insurance company provide their support to any of these type projects, which is good and bad. But the good news is they are much faster at getting their money to us than FEMA is. So we would expect not to have such a lag time in getting support from our insurance company. We have a deductible of 3% per building, but we have a cap, sort of like a maximum out of pocket for your medical, of $10 million. So we can see that $10 million will be the top end with the insurance company. One good thing in the past, the insurance company has paid 100% of debris removal, so that will not be subject to the deductible. So with that said, the cap of $10 million, if you look at what FEMA covers, which we will be submitting all of this and more to FEMA, the federal portion covers 50%, then the state portion, the federal portion covers 75%, then the state portion covers another 12.5%, leaving 12.5% for us to pay. So if you consider $10 million out of pocket, 12.5% of that will be ours, so $1,250,000 in the long run. So really, we're in really good hands. Again, the debris removal comes is covered 100%. So not even all of this will be subject to a deductible or a lesser reimbursement through FEMA. We have very good working relationship with some FEMA contacts. We have someone here in the department who was working with the same contact during Irma, and we're getting lots of questions answered very quickly as to what is eligible and what may not be eligible, and we're even looking at things like, classroom supplies. So it's getting down to some very specific reimbursements that we're working through. As we said, the FEMA reimbursement is slow. We are very happy that our insurance company is we've having the $10 million cap from everyone I've heard is just a wonderful piece of our policy, and it's not in many policies, so that will be helpful. So again, excited that our insurance company will be covering a lot and getting us those funds quickly. The rest that will be coming from FEMA really is not going to be as huge, but we are definitely on top of it. As far as, again, the timing, of course, this is a cash flow issue. We'll be spending the money, and then insurance will be reimbursing us, and then at a very later date, FEMA will be reimbursing us. But quite honestly, one of the things that I'm proud to be part of now is seeing how conservative our team has been, or the team has been, in budgeting our capital dollars. So the fund balance exists. And I don't think there'll be a problem with that as well. If you remember, this year our property values went up considerably. So we did get additional dollars into the capital fund because of that. And if you remember, we set that aside with the idea being that there would be cost increases that we would need to deal with in this changing economy. But it also serves a second as a second aid to us in that now we have additional dollars as well on the bottom line to help us with this cash flow while we're spending more money that we're going to be waiting to get reimbursed.
So it sounds like, at least unless something comes at us that we're not aware of from a pricing issue, we're kind of in the sweet spot with the insurance piece. If we had been up over 53 million or so, we start to get more exposure over 50 million. But because we're under the 50, we're probably capped at that 10. And so hopefully that puts us in a good spot with all of our recovery efforts.
Jody, just point of clarification before we have questions on the insurance. Is it 3% or 10 million, whichever is higher, or 3% or 10 million, whichever is lower? Because 3% of 30 million is $1 million.
So the 3% is per building that's been impacted.
Okay.
So it adds up quickly. So, there's a chance that we won't hit that 10 million when we start piecing it all together. But, and I was under the same opinion, but no, it is 3% per building, which will likely get us to the 10 million.
And then FEMA covers the out-of-pocket costs.
Yeah, FEMA is 75%. Federal FEMA.
Thank you. No, it's 3% of that value of the building, not to exceed 10 million. But my question was, and we're talking about wind damage, correct? I mean, we're talking about the property policy, that's wind and hail. Well, that's named storm, if you will, not flooding. We're not including flood damage calculation. Is that correct?
I would have to defer to Lynn Peterson on that. I know we have, I believe, at least one school that has specific flood,
That was
but I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe our only site that was flooded as a result of flooding and not wind-driven rain was Englewood.
Okay. I just wanted that clarification. Thank you.
And only 2 buildings at Englewood, building 4 and 5.
Okay.
Tom Edwards?
Lots of numbers thrown around and reimbursements and whatnot. So for real down and dirty clarification, what do you think our maximum out-of-pocket exposure is?
Well, let's just say we didn't get anything from FEMA, $10 million.
Yeah, but I heard that we're getting 75% of that. The $2 million is 100% covered. So that's what I'm trying to get to. It's a guesstimate. I know it's a game, but
So $1.5 million.
Got it.
Yes.
How long did it take FEMA to reimburse us for Hurricane Irma?
We're still waiting on some.
That's my problem. I'm right there. That's my problem.
So with that, if you wanted to take a look at the other sheet you got in front of you, which is the 5-year capital plan, just the summary document, we could kind of run through that line item by line item and just take a look. We had made a few additions to that. We've updated some of the budgets we already spoke about. Again, just in terms of process, we come to you at least 3 times a year with this, and this is not being voted on today. This is just kind of a draft for you guys to take a look at some options. Obviously, we wanted the nod to move ahead on the K-8 and Go-Show, but other things that you're going to see here today are up for conversation. And so we'll come back in front of you again based on what we hear from you today in probably February or March timeframe with another draft. So this is really just for your input and for your thinking, okay? So with that, if we could run down through the revenues, the estimated revenues, impact fees, new debt has all been updated in terms of what the finance team believes we're going to bring in with the new rates, and the debt has been updated to include what we're talking about today with the new K-8 and Go-Show. Bonnie, I don't know if you want to comment on that, but these are updated numbers in terms of what we think we're going to borrow.
Right. We did change the plan somewhat, and we've included Go-Show into this debt issue. So it's the new K-8 and Go-Show that were just discussed with the capital outlay plan.
So if you wanted to run down through, our first year is obviously the 22-23 school year, and so that's what we're currently funded. 23-24 is next year. So if you don't mind, I'll just kind of run down through and highlight things that have changed for you on this particular sheet. So Behaving Building 4 is not changed. They are moving forward with the design on that particular campus. Booker High VPA is under construction, and that is pretty impressive construction going on in that building, so no changes there. The next one down, though, is new. It's new to you. We've been having conversations with Booker High for the last few years about they do not have a field house for their football team. And so this was, Dr. Shelley had requested we come out there and take a look at some options. This is an option, and it does fit into the plan. We've got a rough cost on that of about $2 million. That is actually, if you've been to the Booker High campus, it's the old Chiller building. That when you come to campus, it's over on the left in the back by the track. This would be converting that building, which is basically storage right now. It's underutilized space. Converting that to something with locker rooms, some area for the team to kind of have some practice sessions in terms of brainstorming with the coaches and some coaching facilities in that particular area, kind of modeling after what Riverview has in their building. So that's new to you for you to consider. That's where it may fit in the capital budget if you thought you wanted to move forward with it. Booker Middle Roofing is moving forward, no change there. Construction academies, a lot of conversation across the district about making sure that we've got construction academies embedded into our high school programs. As you know, we opened the one at Riverview very recently. We were just at Venice High talking about that one. We're going to Northport High, I believe, to talk about that one soon. So having said that, the team that looks at the CIP felt that even though we don't have costs on some of this stuff, we're not sure exactly where we're going, it would be good to have some money allocated in the budget to address some of these items. And again, just kind of a thought process here. If the board did not want to do that, we could certainly pull it off. But we've put $1 million in this year and $1 million in next year to potentially address facilities issues at these high school sites to incorporate more of the program as you see fit. Again, up for conversation. Cranberry HVAC, this is equipment replacement. It's new this year. This is going in and getting the chillers replaced at Cranberry Elementary. Inglewood has not changed. Fruitville's not changed. Garden Rebuild has not changed. Gosio, we just spoke about. That budget is increased by a small amount. Again, Jane discussed that a little earlier. Heron Creek Middle HVAC, there's $1.9 million in there. That is going to be air handlers on campus. That's new this year. If you remember when we did, like at Sarasota High, we're doing a full-blown HVAC renovation over there. We'll speak about that in a minute. You've seen that project for a while, but that's going into renovating classrooms. At Heron Creek, the design of that campus is up to standard in terms of the way we deliver air to the classroom. So this is specifically just an equipment replacement, much simpler. So that's $1.9 million. High school track and football field upgrades, we're moving forward with that. We are at Booker High is our next one, so we're excited about that. And then we only have, I believe, Venice High left, and that'll complete that run through, which is great. Landings, restroom repairs, renovations, it's still sitting there with the 2.8 sitting on it. There's more conversations we need to have with you regarding the landings, so we're going to postpone that conversation until down the road. The McIntosh Farm hasn't changed. New construction, elementary, Lakewood Ranch, you've seen before. It's sitting out there in 26-27. That has not changed. New construction, high school, Welland Park. Jane is in. John, you want to give him a quick little 2-second update on where you are on that project?
We're working with the developer. We are pushing. They're doing the extension of Minnesota Beach Road. We're making sure that our intersections match up with theirs. So we've kind of forced our team to make those decisions very early in the process to save time and money. And we are in the programming phase right now. And thank you to Edwina, if she's here, for orchestrating meetings throughout hurricanes and school closures and all the other craziness, school lockdowns. We have really been pushing hard to get that going. We are going to be taking a tour of the prototype in Collier County in December. And our hope is that we'll do the same thing. We'll do early release packages to get things procured early We're looking at finishing the schematics in November. So things are moving quickly. People probably feel the pressure, but we have to keep that moving forward to open in 2025.
And so when Jane talks about finishing schematics in November, I think you said, Jane, so the next time this comes to you, there'll be some schematic pricing. So we'll see the incremental, what does that look like with boots on the ground, contractors pricing some of that stuff at the next pass that we give you on this particular document later in the year. The new construction K8 Welland Park will follow. That has not begun yet. The new construction K8 Clark and Lorraine is the one we just spoke about this morning. Northport High HVAC hasn't changed. Oak Park Special Olympics track hasn't changed. The wing renovations are the same. Sarasota High chiller plant HVAC refresh has not changed. That's on progress. They've made selections for that particular project, so we're moving forward there. The Sarasota High tennis courts, I know, is a small project, but you approved that last time you saw this budget. We met on site with city staff, and so we're nice space over there at the park that we're going to be able to utilize. That's going to be a great project for us. As we move on down, the STC cooperative, the COOP, continuity of operations plan, again, that's on hold pending more conversations about the landings. And so we'll talk more about that as we move forward later in the year. The Fire Science Academy relocation, the $5 million we're partnering with the county on. Jane, we've got a groundbreaking in January on that?
No, it's I didn't bring my calendar with me, but
It's coming up.
yeah, it's in November.
In November. Yeah, okay. So that's moving forward. STC renovation phase 3, we've got that priced according to the scope that Mr. DiPillo, Dr. DiPillo had given us. But again, that sits out there in 26, 27, 27, 28. So again, up for conversation. Not sure if that needs to move in terms of the years we're looking at it. Wilkinson HVACs under 500,000, but that is there. That is, again, that's chiller replacement on the Wilkinson campus you haven't seen before. So those are some. I just wanted to highlight some of the new things that we put on here, some things we're thinking about, and then obviously have you think through anything that you see as a priority that we're not addressing. And then so you could kind of see where the bottom line is with our capital budget at this point. Again, we'll bring this back in March, February timeframe for you to look at a second time, and you adopt it over the summer. A couple of things just to have on your radar that aren't on this 5-year plan that we are having conversations about that we're going to have to take a look at in the future. One is the landings, and again, that'll be a separate conversation. The other one is we've been having conversations with David Jones about the auditorium at Sarasota High. We, as part of the project, the HVAC project on Sarasota High, we're having that team do a campus plan, a master plan for the campus in terms of what that might look like moving forward. So we're kind of waiting on that to happen as part of the HVAC project to see. Again, that's our oldest auditorium. We're going to have to do something with that eventually, and what does that look like? So maybe that'll be part of the conversation later in the year. And then Diane's not at the table, but just want to put on your radar City of Northport. And so we are watching that growth in Northport pretty closely. And we had just a conversation just the other day again about, do we need to start thinking about in year 5 as this budget moves forward another school in Northport? And we landed on no. But in the 1 year that's not on here, the next year, which would be 28, 29, if you could see that piece of the spreadsheet, there is a high school in Northport at the Woodland site. You've already got that site purchased. It's sitting there in our land inventory. There's a high school site sitting, a high school funding sitting there. And then there is also a new elementary school at the Woodland site you already own. So 2 schools sitting right off this 5-year plan. Again, that's flexible. We'll take a look at Northport, as you know, is not a planned community, so we see those kind of come in as they come in. But just as we're talking, funding in 28, 29 for a high school, you still wouldn't be in that for 3 years following that. So, you're into 2030. So again, we think you're probably going to be looking at something there. So if that stays true, next year in your 5-year plan, you'll see that fall in the 5-year window. So just wanted to say those kind of things are out there and we're looking at them. So again, kind of a quick summary, a high-level summary of what we think is going on at this particular point, and I'll open up for any questions you may have.
Bridget?
Thank you. One of the projects, and we can wait for a future conversation, I know we talked about it, but was on Polytech's cafeteria. And I know that it was a substantial cost when we even though I thought it would. But I would like to see what we could do from a safety standpoint to evaluate what that cost would look like. I know it's not low, but
Thank you, Mrs. Aguilera. So that's one of the ones that's on our radar I should have mentioned. So Jane, you've got a team out there.
okay.
Who is it?
We convened right before the hurricane hit with an architect and a contractor so they could price options. What are our options? What are the needs there? Where is the best place to put it? And then the hurricane happened, but I don't have my
Great,
calendar with me,
perfect.
but
If
we're
you're working
meeting
on it, awesome.
next week to walk through it again.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Glad to hear that.
Shirley Brown.
When you're looking at Sarasota High auditorium, please include the Ringling College there and the Circus in those discussions. So there's some land there that might be purchased, that might be used for all of you to.
Yeah, so our conversations have been with David Jones. So obviously he's a big advocate for his campus, and I know he's having those conversations. So yeah, it's on our radar.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If there are no other questions, thank you very much. Up next, we are going to talk about municipal bonds 101, an overview of debt financing with Bonnie Penner.
So good morning. We have a really nice progression, as Jody mentioned, with this particular agenda, in that we've talked about all the wonderful projects that we want to get underway, and now we need to talk about how we're going to pay for them. So I have two members of our financing team who are going to talk a little bit about municipal financing for these projects, and this is precursor to next week's agenda, the 14th, where you will be as a board approving the issuance of a new debt issue, and then you will change your hat, as Mr. McKinley likes to say, and as the financing corporation, then you will be approving officially the issuance of the debt. So we have with us Laura Howe, who is with PFM, our financial advisors, and we also have Ritesh Patel, who is with Neighbors, Gidlin, and Nickerson, and So you are special tax and disclosure counsel. So he's been creating these wonderful, huge documents that are going to keep us out of trouble. So I'll let them finish off.
So good morning. Thank you for having us here. As Bonnie had said, my name is Laura Howe. I'm a director at PFM Financial Advisors, and we do serve as your financial advisor. And I'm joined by...
Hey, good morning, Dr. Asplin, members of the board. Ritesh Patel with Neighbors, Gidlin, and Nickerson, your bond counsel. I've been in this industry, I guess, 20 years now, and look forward to explaining muni bonds a little bit to y'all.
So there is a presentation. I wasn't sure if it would pop up or not.
Laura, would you move that mic just a tad closer to you?
Sure. Is that better?
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So this morning, we're going to go through a market update for you. Ritesh is going to cover the funding sources available to Florida school districts, and then we're going to talk specifically about Sarasota County Schools, your debt outstanding, what the potential debt issuance would look like, and then the next steps moving forward. And throughout this presentation, if there's any questions, please feel free to stop us in the middle of it and ask as we move along. So just to give you an idea of where the market is now and what we would be entering into price, it's been mentioned already this morning how the market has changed over the years. The green line is where the past low hit, which was in February of 2021, which is at the bottom. The red line was where we were a year ago, and the yellow line is where we are today. So rates have risen significantly. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. The Fed is meeting December 13th and 14th, which we anticipate another interest rate rise. And you'll see later in the schedule that we're hoping to get this in the market before that occurs. I did want to point out, though, on this slide, this is the MMD yield curve, which is what the last graph was, which is where your bonds would price off of. And this is a historical benchmark, those gray bars from the time of inception. The green is where we currently are, and the blue is average. So while rates have risen significantly, it's still, we're below average for where we've seen over the course since '81. So it could be a lot worse. We've just been used to seeing it a lot better over the last several years, and so I think it's still a little bit of a sticker shock, but we'll talk specifics about what the interest rate might look like overall for this debt issuance for the district as well. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ritesh. Do you want the clicker?
I'm just going to walk you all through capital finance for Florida school districts. As you all know, you have two buckets of money that come in: operating funds that can be used for salaries, benefits, things like that, instructions, and then capital funds. You get some state capital funds, very small amount, and you also get some local capital funds, which is the vast majority of your capital dollars come in through local sources. The state really has two sources of capital funds, being PICO, which is, as you all are probably aware, over the last several years, probably half decade, you don't see any PICO dollars. They all go to charter schools nowadays, which is, it is what it is. And then you also get CONDS dollars, which again is a small bucket of money that's generated from motor vehicle registration renewals. And the PICO, I'll just add, is from the gross receipts tax. That's how those funds are generated. Locally, we move on to your capital outlay millage, which is your major source of capital funding. And under current law, you can levy up to 1.5 mils of capital dollars, which you guys have historically levied the full amount, much like almost every Florida school district, save for a handful. And there's two ways you can pay for capital dollars with capital outlay millage. Pay-go funding, you wait till you've got a hunk of cash and then you spend it on the project. Or you can finance it, you can leverage that revenue source as we're gonna discuss doing, and you issue debt and repay the debt from capital outlay dollars or other funding sources for capital dollars. And those primarily are sales tax, which there's two kinds. The local government infrastructure surtax, which as you all are aware is on the ballot today here in Sarasota County. If approved, you will receive 25% of the revenues generated under the interlocal agreement that you have with the county and various municipalities here. There's also a school capital outlay surtax, which is slightly different. The infrastructure surtax can be levied for up to a penny, and the local school capital outlay surtax, which would just come to a school district, is only a half penny. But again, we're focused on the former, since that is what is on the referendum today, and hopefully approved. And we'll talk more about that in a little more detail as we go forward. General obligation bonds are, again, these are another source of capital dollars that you would go to your electorate in a referendum election to allow the issuance of general obligation bonds, and then what that would do is allow you to levy an unlimited millage on property throughout the district to pay the debt service on the debt that is associated with those GO bonds. Impact fees, which you receive a small amount of here in Sarasota County, but those are very difficult to leverage. Obviously, you don't control impact fees. The Board of County Commissioners controls them, controls how they're levied, at what rate, and can stop them anytime. So credit markets generally do not look for impact fees as a good revenue source to secure debt. And there's also some other short-term referendum options, which we'll talk about as we get into these slides a little more. Talking a little more about PICO and CODS, these are, again, state funding sources that come to you directly, sometimes in the case of PICO, but largely do not come in significant amounts and really aren't great for leveraging. And if you were to try to use CONDS, there is some restrictions on what projects you can use them for. They have to be on what's called the project priority list, and then you can only use them for principal payments, not interest payments. And capital outlay millage, as you all probably are aware, this has been reduced over time. It used to be you could levy 2 mils. It's reduced down to 1.75 mils in around 2009, 2010, and now it currently stands at 1.5 mils. You can use this for a variety of things. as we mentioned, you can fund new construction. You can use it for lease purchase payments, which is where our focus is today when we talk about COPS transactions. You will essentially be entering into a lease and paying lease payments, which is the same as your debt service, principal and interest, and you can use this $1.5 million for that. And they did change the law back in 2010, 2012, I think, where now you can only use 75%, so 1.125 mils of revenue from the 1.5 mil capital outlay millage for any lease purchase agreements entered into after June 30th of 2009. That said, legally you can do that, but as Laura has added in here, credit rating agencies don't really look favorably on someone or an issuer leveraging their full 1.125 mils being capacity constrained. Generally, you want to stay in the 50% range of your local option millage. Okay, so we're going to talk about discretionary funding. There is a couple of short-term funding options, which again aren't great options, but we just want to talk to you about all the things we considered when we were talking about this debt issuance. You do have the ability to go out for referendums for short-term, a 2-year capital or operating millage under the constitutional provision cited on this slide. You could also do a four-year operating, which you have, and which was approved by the electorate in, what was it, 18?
It just got approved in
Okay.
March.
Oh, in March, so, sorry. So you've got that for another 4 years, and hopefully will continue to get renewed. General obligation bonds, again, subject to referendum. Same with the sales tax, as we've talked about. And again, there's those two kinds of sales tax. Okay, certificates of participation. It's a fairly complex structure. You have basically 3 parties. You have the school board, you have your financing corporation, and then you have a trustee and / the certificate owners, which are the ultimate holders of the debt. And so what happens is the school district will enter into a lease agreement with the financing corporation. The financing corporation, quote unquote, builds the schools, but the school board actually acts as the agent for the financing corporation. So the school board and its employees, your facilities folks, all the folks that were up here earlier, handle all the construction, everything. The financing corporation is really just an alter ego of the board, and its only sole purpose is to serve as the financing arm of the school board. You obviously, when you have a lease, you need a lessee and a lessor. Over time, it's been more cost effective and less, and I would say it's bankruptcy proof. One of the reasons these financing corporations kind of took hold is the rating agencies wanted an entity that didn't have any assets or liabilities. Ultimately, all the financing corporations' assets and liabilities are assigned to a trustee bank for the benefit of the holders of the bonds. The term of the lease will go to the full maturity of your debt. So if we're looking at 2048 or so, the term of the lease will be about 25, 26 years. And once all the basic rent payments, which is the principal and interest, are made, that lease terminates, and everything flows free and clear to the school board, and you own all the facilities, the underlying land, which you already own. And everything is transferred over to the school district. There's a lot of documents you will see in your agenda package for next week's meeting. There's a resolution with a lot of exhibits. These are just some of the exhibits I'm going to talk about, but these are what we call the financing documents. These basically function to put the lease purchase for these particular projects in place. Your master lease purchase agreement was approved when you first did your first COPS deal back in 2003. So that is already in place. It basically sets out the parameters, the general provisions that apply to all your leases. When you have a master lease and you have a lease schedule for particular projects, together they constitute a separate lease. And so for each COPS financing you've done over time, you have separate leases. One of the hallmarks of what we do down here in Florida is these are master lease projects, meaning you cannot pick and choose which projects you appropriate for. If you like Welland Park that's coming up, or in this particular case, K8 Lorraine, you cannot just appropriate basic rent payments for that school, but not any of the other schools under your master lease. You appropriate for all of them or none of them, and that's where the credit worthiness comes to, and Laura can speak more to that as we get a little more into the weeds. You also have a ground lease. So what happens is you will lease the site of the school to the leasing corporation, who then in turn subleases it back to you, and they get to use the land to build the projects, which you guys are acting as their agent, as we talked about. So there's none of that. Where it matters is in a default situation, everything is assigned to the trustee. So if for some reason the school board were to non-appropriate funds, the trustee does have rights to come in and take over these projects and try to derive some revenue in order to pay off the debt. Obviously, no one expects that to happen, but that has to be part of the equation when we set up these transactions, because that's how bondholders ultimately in a bad situation would look to get repaid for the debt. Let's see. So bond counsel, myself, we draft all the financing documents, our firm does, and the investors are the ultimate purchasers of the COPS certificates or participation. One thing I'm remiss I didn't mention is that this structure has been approved by the Florida Supreme Court over time, first in the early 90s, most recently in 2007. So it's a legally approved structure by the Florida Supreme Court, and it's been in the last 15 years been reapproved by the Florida Supreme Court. So what it allows you to do is not go through and have to have referendums to build facilities ultimately. And then over the life of the lease, as we've talked about, typically 20 to 25 years, the school board is going to make basic rent payments, a principal portion and interest portion, to the trustee, which then turns around and pays the bondholders those rent payments on the interest payment dates for the related debt.
Richard, do you have a question about something?
I'll wait until he's done. But
Okay. And again, once all the payments are made, and if you pay it off early, the lease terminates, the ground lease goes away, everything flows back to the school board, they own the property again, no subleases, they own all the improvements of the property free and clear and have title to all of those. Happy to answer any questions, or Laura's got the next section.
Thank you. This was, well, I appreciate this. I think many people watching, or when they go watch it, to understand COPS. One question I have, particularly looking at the market, I know it went through the Supreme Court, but I've always found this funny and just curious. Are there any other government municipalities that use COPS outside of school districts?
Very rarely. So most of our counties and cities have home rule authority. School boards typically do not, or have traditionally not been thought to have home rule. There is some language in one of the statutes that maybe makes people think twice about that. So you are constrained in the sense that you only can, you have to have statutory authority to issue a particular kind of debt. Okay?
Understood.
Unlike counties or cities that can issue debt that's a covenant to budget and appropriate from any non-ad valorem source. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
No, it actually will define the difference of why school districts may opt for this, because there are so many limitations with capacities and leveraging any kind of build or anything like that.
I think around the country there's other entities that do COPS deals. I think I've only done one ever non-school district COPS deal, and that was for the Department of Corrections. I think it was a jail facility.
Okay.
But that's been it.
Well, that brings me to, so I know the state of Florida, for you said lots of school districts do this, so not, looking at the risk factor, we're in a very different market. So what happens, I know we have a incredibly astute finance team, so this is not actually at you, I think it's just the market. When you look at it, if there are other school districts that are not very prudent with their financial spending, and then what's the default likelihood look like for other districts, and how does that impact anything from a?
Well, it won't. No matter what another district does, maybe there's some. Florida. Well, this district defaulted, so that makes all Florida issuers look bad. But I'll kind of punt this to Laura a little bit. It's more of a rating agency and credit view, so that's more her arena than mine.
Perfect, because these are questions we get all the time. So go ahead.
Yeah, so when we're talking to the rating agencies, I mean, and what Ritesh was saying, it's an all or none. So some school districts may only have 4 schools in their district under the master lease, where some have 80. And so when you approve your budget every year as a board, this is in there. And so it's an all or none, as Ritesh was saying. You can't just say we want one school. So say all of a sudden in the south side of the county you had no growth and it was all in the north and you're like, I don't want to pay for that school anymore because no one's there. This doesn't allow you to do it, which allows the security to be there. So that provides security to the investors. And then the rating agencies, when they're looking at this, they're diving a lot deeper into your financials and, but it took some time for the rating agencies to really get comfortable and understand how Florida school districts issue debt. So your issuer rating for the district is a AA2, but your COPS rating is a AA3. In the state of Florida, no school district COPS are rated a AAA, and it's always one notch off because of the security and how they view it. I'm hoping, is that answering your question?
Yeah, I mean, it's getting there. So then I guess the final question is, when we do the corporation, I can't think of the name.
The leasing corp.
Thank you. So that the officers on there, are they technically the individuals that own all of that debt?
No.
Or it's the entity?
There's no personal liability for anybody sitting on the board of directors of the financing corporation, and frankly, everything is assigned to the trustee bank, which used to be Wells Fargo. They've been taken over by an outfit out of Australia called Computershare Trust Company. And so ultimately, once the documents are put in place, the deal closes, the corporation has no more liabilities or rights or responsibilities under that particular lease, save for a few reserved rights, allowing them to enter into additional lease schedules, indemnification, and also to maintain the tax status of the debt.
I thank you. I know exactly where I'm going to send this tape because there's someone who asks these questions all the time. So thank you very much.
What is Sarasota's credit rating at this point?
It's a AA3, and we just had a call with Moody's yesterday, and we'll get the results back on Thursday. So now we're going to talk about where your debt is and what the potential issuance would look like. This chart is showing your current outstanding certificates of participation, the 2010 AQ SCIB, as well as the Series 2016. So the Series 2016 expires in 2025, and the Q-SCIP goes out through 2027, the small green line on the bottom. The yellow line, sort of in the middle of the graph, is where 50% of the 1.5 mils, assuming a 96% collection, of fiscal year 2023. So if your property values did not grow at all through 27 and that remained flat, this is where that line would be. The orange is 75% of the 1.5 mils at 95% collection. Again, assuming no more growth in your property value over the coming years. Currently, the district is utilizing 0.175 mils to pay the debt for your maximum annual debt service, which is occurring in 23 and 24 at $15.9 million. On the next slide, this is the same, the orange and the yellow lines showing your 50% and your 75% have not changed at all. Your current outstanding debt, which is the green for the 2010 AQ SCIB, the gray for the 2016 COPS, that's all the same as well. What we did is we layered on, assuming we were borrowing $132.6 million for projects, and put this across. We looked at this and said the district's capacity is so high on this that we'd be able to bring this to a final maturity of 2037, which investors, when you get out past 20 years right now, are pretty flighty. So this is well within the 20 years, your 15 years. It matures quicker, so then obviously you'd be paying less principal and interest as well. One thing I did want to point out, your maximum annual debt service would go up in 2024 to $22.4 million, and that's just the interest piece that's from the new issuance on top of that. But when you step down after that, your maximum annual debt service is only $15 million, which is actually less than the 15.9 now how we have this structured. So we wanted to make sure it was looking at the shortest maturity as possible, keeping it conservative, keeping it in line with what the district's done in the past, as well as allowing for future additional capacity if there was needs to borrow. Obviously, as Ritesh said, these funds can be available for PAYGO or to be able to borrow to pay for the certificates of participation. So with your maximum annual debt service occurring in 2024, you'd be utilizing 0.2462 mils. Incredibly low, very conservative debt outstanding. Theoretically, if we went up to 50% of the capital outlay millage, assuming that it was level growth or that there's no growth, that it remains level as today and it just stays flat, you could borrow up to $842 million, theoretically, in projects. Not that we're advising you to do that, but just putting that out there. Any questions on that before I move? Okay. So moving forward, we did have the ratings call yesterday and are looking to hear back from Moody's on Thursday the 10th. This is coming for your consideration on the 15th. We are planning with approval that then we would price on November 29th and close on December 15th. One of the things that we think is actually really kind of interesting and a unique opportunity for the districts, there's some other in the state of Florida that have participated in this, but the pricing on the 29th, we're actually coordinating for some of the students at the various locations to be able to come up to Raymond James offices, which is our senior underwriter, so they can be there. And Rick is here from Raymond James if you wanted any more information about this, but they can come and watch the pricing live, get a tour of their desk, hear from other professionals in the industry, and kind of, understand what that's like to be pricing bonds. So that was.
I think that's great. Dr. Asplund?
Ms. Penner, I know you can speak to this better, but I think we also have students that are attending that as well, correct?
Yes, we have asked. Amy Earle is helping to coordinate this, and we're expecting around 10 students from each of the high schools to attend, of course, chaperones and things like that. But yeah, they're trying to make sure they select the students with this finance. The intent, because it will be interesting. There's some good conversations Mr. Patterson mentioned in regards to some of their team that maybe has just gotten out of college, so they can get some real good advice as to where they might want to go.
So just one other thing, looking back at page 18, yes. So the 2016 debt would close out in 2025, and the QSCIB would close out in 2027. And then the only thing we would have there, the only debt we would have is this new debt that we are about to get into. Correct.
And we left it so that it was level at 15 million out, so it would be consistent. The district has plenty of capacity that we wouldn't worry about it, but with what happened in 2009 with property values, we always take that into consideration when we're looking at this. And so, your maximum annual debt service with the new debt being lower, we anticipate property values would continue to, maybe level out, but nothing like what occurred before, but that is something that we do take into consideration to make sure that you remain in a strong financial position.
I think we received some good rates back in 2016 too, because of the time we had stimulus dollars, I think, that were available, and any school in Florida that was ready for something, there was some money set aside, and we were able to take advantage of that with Booker because we were ready to go with it. So we really did very well at that time.
Oh, and I meant to mention as well, with this structure going out to 2037, the total interest costs that we're looking at for the all-in true interest costs is about 4.62% is what we're estimating. There is some cushion in there, but depending on what the market does before we would price on the 29th. But for 15-year money, while rates have increased significantly, 4.62% is, I think, still pretty great considering where mortgages are today.
All right.
No other questions? Thank you so much. This was a real good review for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. We're finishing a little bit earlier than anticipated. We have a presentation scheduled for 1 o'clock. So right now, we're going to move a couple of items up from the afternoon session. The school board meeting calendar and the school district calendar. Why don't we start with item number 9? We have to approve this at the next board meeting. Let me get to it. There may be some changes that you all as a board will want to, I guess, did Mrs. Ziegler leave? No, I think she went to the rest. Oh, okay, so if you look under section number 9, for December 2022, the December work session and board meeting are both on December 13th. Is this to stay the same or be changed? That's the first question. Shirley?
Oh, I was looking at the regular calendar. I don't even have this one, I don't think.
Okay, this is item number 9. It's the
I know.
behind that.
I don't care about next year's board meetings. I won't be here.
So that's the first question. And then the school board meetings in 23, the first and third Tuesdays of the month. Exceptions, January, July, and December. The issue, the budget meeting takes place in August, needs to be scheduled between August 1st and 4th. And then the tentative date on the listing for each month is the Tuesday between the two board meetings for work sessions. So we're going to leave that as it is. We have to approve it next week. Are we going to leave it as it is at this time? Mr. Edwards?
Looks good to me.
Well, I'm not going to be on this, but I will approve it. And I would say, just, from a standpoint of looking at this, I don't have anything that I can add. And then if you look at the tentative 2023 board meetings as they appear on the next sheet, along with the work sessions, and then the calendar itself, which consists of the last two items, that is in effect what will be approved next week. If we have no objections, we can ferret it out at the board meeting, I guess, if we have to. Karen is ill today. She is not here.
Well, why don't we, I think she had to take a phone call.
Oh, okay. All right. So I really have nothing to add. Dr. Asplund, do you?
No.
Like to sing the first stanza?
No, this looks good, and we'll have it on the, obviously, on the board packet for the 15th. It can be discussed again if needed, but we'll have it on the board packet for a vote.
Okay. So hearing no objections to that, we'll move on to item number 10, which is the district calendar. Allison Foster, our HR director. Allison, could you come forward, please?
We were planning to have a couple others join us just in case there are questions, but I think we should be fine. Basically, in looking at the time that we missed, we had the schools in North and Mid County missed 9 days due to Hurricane Ian. And then we had most of our Northport schools miss 13 days, with 2 schools, Cranberry and Inglewood, that missed 14 days of school. So basically that required our team to kind of look at the calendar, look at the minutes, look at the hours. So we had a group with our curriculum team, and they're not in here now. They were going to come later, but we had Rodney Davidson, that was part of the team, Catherine Kokoza, Steve Cantis. So state of Florida, first part is you need 180 school days. If you don't have 180 school days, then we go down to the hours. So of course, with the missed days, we move down to the hours. With our additional minutes, with the extra 30 minutes that we have every day, we have the required 900 hours that are needed for the school year. And then we broke it down even looking at the minutes that are needed for the individual courses at the high school level. And that's why high schools became a little bit more involved in the picture. Then the other thing we wanted to look to was the lost instructional time. And of course, over the last few years, we've had a lot of different things that have impacted instructional time with concurrent instruction, COVID days, and now having the hurricane in the mix. And so really looking at the calendar to say, okay, if we're going to add student days back in the calendar, are they going to be productive days? Are the students going to be able to come to school based on the schedule that parents may have planned around the calendar? We want to make sure that we can have staff there so that we have the teachers there able to instruct our students. So we had a lot of discussion, what would be the best as far as potentially adding days, and what we came to the conclusion was to add 2 student days back to the calendar by converting 2 professional days. So we have the professional day, which is currently for January 9th. It's the Monday after the winter break. Typically, our staff will come back on that first day in January. It gives them an opportunity to kind of get back, get grades in, get ready to go. But converting that from a 4-day student week to a 5-day student week, we felt that we could get our students back. Typically, the parents, after a long break, they like to have their students back in school or their children back in school. And so that was the first day that we thought would be a good learning and instructional day. Also, we know that our instructional staff is already scheduled to be there. The other day was converting the professional day in March, doing that same thing. We were scheduled on March 20th to have a professional day, so it's the Monday after spring break. So it's kind of the same situation that we're in after the winter break, was converting that day. Once again, the instructional staff's already scheduled to be there, so we felt like that was a better day to potentially add to the calendar. And also, when you look at the schedule for students, having a 5-day student week or 5-day week versus a 4-day week, typically that helps with instruction. We looked at a lot of options, looking at Thanksgiving, looking at other potential breaks and things, and we thought if we added or converted some of those days, the attendance wouldn't be as good as potentially these 2. So right now, I think our recommendation would be to convert those 2 professional days to student days. And I've got the team here so we can take any questions, or hopefully we won't have any other days. Hopefully the storm that we have currently out there will stay clear, and we can just kind of add these 2 days and finish out the year. So I don't know if anyone wants to add anything.
I think you summarized it really well. Shirley?
Putting those professional days back, I know extending the winter break and the spring break through to the Monday, looks like, I don't know. But there may be people who have planned and made plans already. I just think we'll probably have to deal with those. But I think overall, having the 5-day work week makes sense. And if we're going to have to put some days back, those look like the days that we would want to do it. But I see that, we definitely need to make sure that our staff and our parents are notified of this, so that if they've made plans, but I would think most of them would have probably planned to come back on the Sunday and, kind of get ready on the Monday. I don't know. But I would think overall it might make things better for a lot of families.
So I think the thought is, after the discussion today, that it will be on the meeting for next Tuesday. Provided it passes, then we'll work with Craig and his awesome communications team, and we'll get that word out to all of our families.
Tom Edwards?
All of what you said makes perfect sense, but what I understand from our teachers is that they're always looking for planning days and personal and professional time. I feel badly that once again, it seems that the teachers are on the short end of the stick of that conversation. So I'm sure that they're team players, and I know that they want the best for our students, but I just want to make sure that you've had those kinds of conversations to make sure that it's palatable to them as well.
And we've shared, we happen to have the calendar committee, which will be coming up next month for the next 2 years. And so we happen to be meeting with that group, which has lots of representatives from the union on that committee. So we did share this recommendation with them. Obviously, there's no ideal situation. It's trying to pick the best solution based on just different options.
That's not really an answer. I mean, I appreciate it. I would feel better if we had some conversation from the union or some dialogue that said, you know, we appreciate that everyone's sharing in this process, parents, students, teachers. I just don't want them to feel that it's always put on the teachers. That's really the message I'm concerned about.
And we've had dialogue with the union. So one thing that most schools do is they will exchange having collaborative planning time during the year in exchange where then the teachers could be off on one of these days. So we're working with the union. Rex was part of that calendar committee when we brought all of this up. We can bring it back to them, but we have had discussions. We can continue to have discussions. We're bringing it back to the schools to allow the schools. I don't know if you want to share with some of the conversations you've had with the schools to have the staff at those schools vote kind of on how they want to look at how collaborative planning, how that's being impacted by this.
Well, I'd say a couple things. The union was informed of the decision, so there was, I think, extensive talks with them on this. Number one. Number two, teachers were on the calendar committee, correct? Mm-hmm. So we had teachers on the calendar committee. And the third thing I would say is that as you look across the options that you have, I don't know that any of the options are going to be anything that it's going to be this challenge or that challenge. It's going to be half a dozen or a six. So at the end of the day, I think we kind of went through all of those options, and this is where we landed, and it seemed to be the most logical thing. And I think the really big piece that Allison said, that reiterate, when you have shortened weeks, you tend to lose staff anyway. There'll be, you have extended people taking personal days or whatever. I think this will allow us to have 2 full weeks during those times that we initially would not have. The other thing I'd say, Tom, the planning time, you're exactly right. Mr. Edwards, the planning time, you're exactly right. And we have, through our Jumpstart funds this year, provided extensive planning time for teachers to work through collaborative planning. So they're getting those days during the year where we're bringing subs in for small groups. That maybe it's a math department at middle school or high school, English department. So we built some additional planning time in for them this year where they're working on collaborative planning through the PLC model. But again, there's no perfect answer to this. This is probably the best solution that we could come up with anyway.
I get it, and thank you for that. And Allison, actually, when you said individual schools are working with their teachers to try and work with them for that kind of individualized time, that is what I wanted to hear, that there is flexibility and that there's sensitivity, that we understand, at least from my seat, that teachers are given back here, and I'm appreciative of that.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I've heard from teachers who are concerned that we're going to take away part of Thanksgiving, and that sort of thing as well. So it's 2 days of what could be 9, 13, or 14 days. So I think it's minimal in that way, and I think many teachers are grateful that we're able to use the resources that we have from expanding our hours through the referendum dollars. So I think that's a plus for us. And I think, as you said, Steve, having a full week as opposed to 4 days in that week makes for better instruction. Bridget?
Yes, thank you. Well, I think it's been said. There's no good, there's no good solution here. It's all lose. Dr. Aspen and I were going back and forth, and so what I do like with this is that the extension of that 1 week. I think the continuity of instruction, because that's my biggest concern. I think it's everyone's biggest concern, and then also being thoughtful to the I know when this was done with Irma, we used the additional 30 minutes to offset the days closed. I don't remember how long we were closed, but, and we had, and rightfully so, there was a lot of people in the community who were not happy about that because that's not what the taxpayers are investing in. And so I think we need to be cognizant, and I'm not saying anyone, I know everyone has been, I just want to say this because I anticipate it, and I unfortunately still feel like begrudgingly not sure where I want to go. At the same token, I want, I recognize families have their scheduled plans and staff has their scheduled plans, and then trying to weigh all those options. So I want to make sure, especially coming after COVID and all of this, I don't know if there are additional ways to do the calendar in the future years where we look at them. I don't know, but I'm just thinking, because I don't want, we do live in Florida. We're going to have storms. And so that is a contingency that, yes, we do have now because we have an additional bank of hours because of the referendum. But I think we owe it to be very transparent. And again, this is not directed at anyone. I know you guys all feel the same way. I just think where we sit with this decision is we have this investment from our community in a generous way. So how can we potentially look at future calendars where maybe there's, I don't know, a little wiggle room where we aren't going to cut our students' academics short? I don't know any changing of any calendars always never make 100% people happy no matter what. But I just want to be thoughtful of that in the future. But in my mind, I think the frustration for every stakeholder of this is the least disruptive and the best way I can think of it. But it's painful, I guess, is my whole. I would like to say, wish we had a different option. So we could also extend the year. And so just to put that out there, there's other options that when people hear about this, that what does that look like? I know I told Dr. Asplund, what if we added 30 more minutes on to the school year? However, with that comes a whole litany of different adjustments as well. But I just want to make sure that people listening or watching recognize there are a lot of different evaluations and thoughts to this. It wasn't taken lightly, and I'm still not looking forward to it.
Well, northern schools build in snow days.
Yep.
So there's a way of, maybe at some point in time you look at hurricane days, God forbid.
Actually, we discussed this yesterday at Cabinet, the next 2 years, and Dr. Asplund did bring that up and ask that we designate certain days on the next 2 years that we would say these are the first days that would be added back.
Optional should we need them.
Right, and that will be indicated. So you'll see that in December when we have those next two. So we're making that change. So Dr. Asplund shared that yesterday.
Thank you.
Dr. Asplund?
Yes, thank you. And I think Ms. Ziegler really said it as far as there's so many different things that you have to take into consideration just to add days back. And you would think you just pop days on there and you're done, right? But there's a lot of different things. And I know she and I talked about, adding another 30 minutes onto our days and and having that flow until we make up the days. And when you talk about that conversation, I know she and I talked about this as far as, you remember last year when we were trying to fix the bus situation, we added 15 minutes to, 5 or 6 schools, right? Yeah, and so, students need to go to karate, they need to go to their jobs, they have, there's a lot of things that are out there that you just can't do that. And so we talked through that, trying to figure out the best way to do it. And then, even if you add days on the end, if you don't count the days that teachers were paid that they didn't come in, and you're going to pay teachers, remember, it's $1 million a day. So that's $5 million if you were going to have schools open another 5 days. And so just these 2 PD days, I want people to understand too, just these 2 PD days are going to cost us $300,000 because our classified people weren't scheduled to work because it's a professional development day. It's not a student day. They only work on student days. So we'd have to spend another $300,000. We will spend $300,000 just to have those 2 PD days converted. But I do want everybody, like you said, Ms. Ziegler, I wanted everybody out there to understand that, those referendum days, those 18 extra days that you really get out of the referendum, so important for instructional success for our students. And we don't want anybody to think we take those lightly. I mean, we really, really thought about those, and then we thought about our professional development days and where can you compromise and what's it going to cost and all those things, knowing how important the referendum days are. We'd rather not take them. At the same time, you kind of back yourself into a corner to where there's nothing really left. Luckily, we do have these 18 extra days, which puts us, even with the professional development days that we're turning into student days, we still end up with more than 900 hours of instruction. They're still getting more than 900 because of the referendum. I think 950 hours in one case. So it's great that we have the referendum. We're still going to have more instruction than other districts would have, but we still need to solve this problem. So I appreciate everybody out there understanding that, and we don't want to mess with people's vacations either. So, but moving forward, like Allison said, into the next couple of years, we're going to designate certain days and make sure everybody's on board with that, so that we all know going into it, well, these are the days that'll probably be taken. That'll help parents to be able to plan better as well. Thank you.
Global warming days. Who knows? I knew you wouldn't like that, but I was going to say it. I was going to say it anyway. Mrs. Brown.
Have you looked at making the last 2 days for the teachers in May, the 30th and the 31st, either optional or professional days? I guess optional, because professional days, they have to be at school. And I know the 30th and the 31st, they use for taking down their classrooms, but not all teachers need that time. I mean, maybe
most schools that had the CPT waivers will probably be using those days to work with the staff to potentially vote on a different day to have off in exchange for the collaborative planning sessions throughout the year that are administratively led. So we have most schools participating in that CPT waiver, and because these 2 days potentially would now be student days, those 2 days would potentially be days then that the schools could put as an option for a waiver day.
Would you say the CBC, what?
Collaborative planning time.
Okay.
Or PLC, Professional Learning Community.
Okay, I think that's it. I don't see any other questions. So this will be voted on at the next board meeting. Thank you. So we're going to break for lunch. Mrs. Ziegler, while you were away, we went over item number 9, which is something that we will vote on next week as well. I think you may make changes to that after you have the new board or whatever, should you want to do that. But we're pretty much leaving it this way. The first question was, do you want to do everything? The first meeting in December is the only meeting. And so do you want to have the work session and the board meeting on that same day, December the 13th?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I was going to say leaving it status quo. If there's any changes, we can all do that in a future
That's right.
meeting.
Okay, just wanted to make sure
Yeah, no, thank you.
We're part of this. So with that, I think we have a 1 o'clock session with SSIS, and that will be the final item for today. We will break for lunch now and reconvene shortly before 1 o'clock.
And if I may.
Yes, Dr. Asplund?
I'm going to be on that 1 o'clock call with the EOC, so Mr. Renoff's going to sit in my place until I can get back.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you very much. We are adjourned until 1:15, or excuse me, until 1 o'clock.